Irish fairy tales are now available at irishfairytales.com. We create beautiful keepsake kids' costumes and enchanting tales to spark little ones' imagination. Each book is sprinkled with cúpla so that parents and children can learn a couple of words in Irish together, and don't worry, they're written phonetically for those that need it, like me. These are gorgeously illustrated books and each have a message of bravery and compassion, and you can choose from either the mermaid version or the dragon version, or if you've two little ones you can get both and the stories mirror each other. And once you've read the story together, your little one can dress up in their beautiful wipe clean tale that are designed to be safe and sensory friendly, and off they go on their adventures. irishfairytales.com. Hello, I'm Stef McSherry and this is the Mum Mind podcast, the show where we talk about the stuff that matters. And my goodness, are we talking about what matters today? Today I'm talking to Aimee Owens. Aimee is a teacher and her dad is suffering with Alzheimer's. And she's realised out of this experience, both the teaching and with her dad, that children can find these scenarios quite upsetting, and she is discovering kind of a new way of communicating about Alzheimer's and how to be best, upfront and honest with your kids or your grandkids or your nieces or nephews about what's going on with relatives in the family that might be struggling with stuff. So I think this is really worth a listen and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Mum Mind podcast, Aimee. It's so lovely to talk to you.
So lovely to speak to you, Steph. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I was just admiring your husband's wallpaper. We were talking about the fox wallpaper because I know everyone's going to ask about that. Where did you get the wallpaper?
This happened during COVID, and I think it was just one of those necessary things to do when we had nothing to do. So we were like, right, we'll wallpaper it came out well. I think we got it in a little shop. We live in Portlaoise, so yes. We got it in a little kind of home design shop there.
Nice.
So I have a few popping up around the place in the home. We left everything else white just because that's the way I like it, and a few of those little pops of colour just to add a little bit, a talking point, I suppose.
I love it. it. So I'm talking to you today, and I guess it's not very often I get to say this on this podcast, but I think this very much starts with your story and your experience. So would you mind talking me through your experience with your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad got diagnosed with dementia, vascular dementia and Alzheimer's about 4.5 years ago, Steph.
Okay.
So he's 81 and a half now. And he was quite good up until that. He was in retirement. He was swimming, he was walking every day, all the rest. And then we started to kind of notice little bits of sort of memory problems, a bit of anxiety, all the things, the little sort of triggers you would notice there that there was something wrong. So my sister is a nurse consultant, so she was straight on it and she was brilliant for navigating, the diagnosis. Because, I just want to be aware there might be some people listening to this that are going through that. And that is really difficult. And it is difficult to get to that point where you have a diagnosis.
Well, and I can imagine it's difficult to broach with your parent. I can imagine I don't know whether your dad was like this, but with a lot of people, I can imagine there's reluctance. I'm not forgetting stuff. That's not true. No. That's not happening. A lot of denial, I guess.
A lot of denial. Do you know what else? You've hit the nail on the head. Shame. Steph, shame, particularly from men. I think it's kind of demoralizing, particularly that generation, They're of that generation that don't talk, we don't kind of show our feelings, that kind of thing. So I felt there was a lot of shame. I'd say we would all say that there's four of us, four girls, and they all live near mum and dad. As I say, there was a little bit of that with him. And I think we tried to closet him from that a bit. Like mom took that role on there. She's just such a good carer. Like she's in her mid to late 70s and she's still caring for him at home herself. The girls are fantastic, I have to be honest. They're kind of around and they come in and out and help. when they can. But mom was great at just keeping things calm, not saying too much to him, not
Yes.
worrying him too much. And I have to say, even the doctors and consultants are so good at
Mm.
doing that because they know that that person is probably struggling themselves, you know. And I actually found that that was nearly a harder part for him because it was like he was kind of here, but he was kind of somewhere else,
And
you
there's
know.
such a massive adjustment for you as a family.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the big thing. And I suppose that's where, that's where I kind of got this idea, just looking at him, in relation to his grandchildren. He's
Mm.
five grandchildren, they all idolize him and I suppose now it's a little bit different, but growing up, he really did and was very close to them all.
Yeah.
So I kind of was sort of slowly watching, how that relationship was changing and, how everyone as well spoke to them about daddy, because they were
Yes.
young enough. Now they're, the eldest is 18, but the youngest is 8, and
Yeah.
that's still quite young. And their formative years there, that whole,
Yeah, and there's a period of adjustment for you guys as
mm,
children, I guess, adult children.
yeah,
And then I would imagine the temptation is initially to keep the kids away, like as in to
absolutely.
shelter them from it. Don't tell them as long as you can get away with not telling
So
them. And then there
true.
probably gets a point where you have to
Yeah.
tell them. And
Yeah.
again, then it's the period of adjustment for them.
Yeah, like I mean, definitely I see what you're saying. Whenever we were going through getting the diagnosis, like
Yeah.
nobody really knew what it was going to be, how bad it was going to be.
Yeah.
Was it dementia? There's all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
questions, but there is that temptation to gloss over things for children. And you and I both know like kids are hugely empathetic
Yeah.
and they feel as well, like viscerally feel everything around them. So,
Yeah.
if somebody, but whenever a child walks in, they know straight away they're
Yeah.
picking up on that.
Yeah.
They really understand on some other subliminal level that,
Mm. Something's
there's
going
something
on.
going on,
Yeah. And they
something
want
going
to
on.
know.
Yeah, I know.
So, what was the initial conversations with all the children?
Yeah,
Was there like a gentle explanation at first as
yeah,
to what
for
Alzheimer's
sure.
is?
Yeah, I would say, do you know what? I would say, and what I will say about this is, this is so personal to each and every family. So if there's anybody listening,
Mm.
I'm not saying this will work for your family, and that is not the point I want to get across here. I really just want to, cement the fact that we are all different, all our families are different, and
Mm.
everyone going through this journey, every situation is different. So for us, I suppose, the five grandchildren, look, they're fantastic. And they were very very aware. They just kind of, it's like they just knew.
Yes.
And they were so soft with daddy. And they were like, there's something just not right there, because the thing is with kids, and I put a little bit of content up about this on my Instagram, and I'm only really starting stuff. So, anyone that sees it, bear with me, but and I will put a bit more of, but you have to be very gentle with it, so bit by bit you explain it, so
Mm.
kids don't need to know every little bit, and any psychologist I've ever spoken to, in school, they've said, give it to them in steps,
Yeah.
that's the best way to deal with any sort of situation going on at home. So I would definitely say be gentle with them, reassure them that their grandfather or grandmother still loves them.
Yeah.
That is the number one message here, that they still love them, but also that they are still deserving of their love, you
Yes.
know?
And they're very
Um,
accepting of those kind of
oh,
changes when stuff is going
absolutely.
on. I think we don't give them
Mhm,
enough credit, really,
mhm,
that, when
mhm,
you've done it in very clear,
mhm.
not fluffy language. Like they say the same when a
Yeah,
parent dies, right? Not
yeah.
to, oh, they've passed away or they've gone to sleep, not to dress it up like
Oh,
that, just
yeah.
to be very
No.
clear,
Yeah.
not cold, but
No,
clear.
no,
Yeah.
no, 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 a bit of realism, you
Yes.
know, you know, just realistic, and kids will relate to that,
Yeah.
and they really, in schools now, like, it's everywhere. We don't discriminate,
Yes.
everybody's the same. We love everybody. We're kind to everybody. So no matter what the situation is, and also I would say, Steph, a bit of levity in there. Keep it light. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you can still have fun with granddad. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like you can still, just because I would say it very gently, like, just because granddad's brain works, differently,
Yeah.
or, it depends as well on the age group of the child.
Of
Do you know what I
course. Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a younger child, you could compare it to something like a toy that's a little bit broken, or their battery's running a little bit low. Granddad's brain, it's a bit like that. It forgets things sometimes, very gently, very like that. Then an older child, you can kind of go into a little bit more detail, but
Yeah.
the question will inevitably, there will be questions, but you
Oh,
know,
always.
um, you know, but I think if you don't speak to them, if you don't say something, this is what I've noticed with kids and parents. Like I have had, so aside from our own situation, I've had this situation in school, like infant teaching. I was infant teacher for maybe, I'd say, 8 to 10 years, and I've had parents come to me and say, look, their grandmother's gone into a home. I
Mm,
think they're really upset about this, but I don't really know how to broach this.
okay.
And, like, these are younger children then, but what's happening is they're going to bed, and then the tears are coming, the frustration is coming. Where's granddad? All this kind of thing. But they might be fine during the day, but kids will do that, and then it will all just get
Yeah.
too much for them. So there are loads of little triggers there that you everyone knows their own child, don't they? Like that's it.
Do you, does your dad have certain times of the day when he's a little bit better? Do you pick and
Mm-hmm.
choose kind of
Mm-hmm.
when kids
Mm-hmm.
can visit?
Yeah, like I think that like I put up a post on this because I thought it was really important. Like, that there is better times for people with dementia, and any
Okay.
doctor will say that. There's that phase called the sundowning phase, when it's sort of coming into evening, and dad will definitely he'll be sort of a little bit more sort of irritable, maybe a bit anxious, maybe more tired, and definitely a little bit more confused,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
And even mum would say, like, the mornings, much better,
Yeah.
and actually morning, early afternoon, that can be the sweet spot for people with dementia.
Okay.
So that point might be a good part. Now, look, that's not saying things will happen in
Yeah.
evenings. That's just family life, isn't it? So, I mean, I, I would say don't limit any of that, but I just think be aware.
Yeah.
And I would also say be aware of those little signs that, maybe the person with dementia, the cues they're given those, if they start rubbing their legs, or they start moving, or you know
So
what I
you know
mean?
they're getting uncomfortable. Yeah. Okay.
There is something there that, but look, as I say, every family will know their own, person that's
Mm,
going through it. Like, one other thing I would say is just about, like, schools and stuff, that, and any teacher listening to this as well, they would notice that the amount of grandparents that collect kids and leave kids to school, and that's what really got me thinking about this. Not that they're going through this, but what I'm saying is that could be the case. Just that, we have to be aware that relationship between the grandparent and the child is
mm,
such a core relationship,
yeah. Completely.
it's
Completely.
it's
If this is too personal, please don't say that you don't want to answer it, but was there ever
No.
a time when your dad maybe didn't know that child's name? Like, was
Oh
there
yeah.
something? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did the child find that upsetting? Like, how did you broach that scenario?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they just sort of almost, the thing with Daddy is he's quite smart at nearly knowing that there's something wrong. So what he will do is you'll kind of see him look like this, and you just know. And now maybe it's that, I'm his daughter, and I just sort of know by looking at him, he is that bit more confused. So he won't say the name. He
Okay.
mightn't.
He's
It's like
avoiding it. Yeah.
there's a total avoidance
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah.
and like, but maybe in some way he just knows that there's something not right, and
Yes.
and he is afraid to say in case he
Yes.
either upsets someone or makes himself seem sort of silly. And I think that I would say a lot of people, families have seen that. But one scenario that comes into my head is just about names and stuff. Is we have a little dog called Winston, okay? And during COVID we were moving house, and Winston used to go up and down to mum and dad a bit with me, because they live up in Monaghan. So I took Winston up, and when we were moving, the chaos and all that, so mum said, leave him here for a little while or whatever. So daddy was kind of he was sort of looking at him like, what is this? Because Winston's a bit of a, he has notions about himself. We'd say, Steph.
He's
And
not an
that,
outside dog, is he?
no, not at all. Sure, the name will tell you, like he's a Maltese or something. He's like,
Okay.
he's a mixed breed. He's gorgeous. But anyway, Daddy used to call him a cat because he thought, oh, what are you doing with? And he had a jumpers on him. Sure, we'd have him dressed up. He was gorgeous. But anyway, he thought he was like, this cat coming here, and I can't be walking that. But anyway, within a week, they were in love with each other. I mean,
Oh,
in love with each other, right? And so then we were noticing, like it happened kind of between that kind of year. It kind of went, his memory and things was kind of declining, and so like I didn't have the heart to take him back with me, and my husband was fantastic. He was like, yeah, of course we leave the dog or whatever.
oh,
So then one day we were up there, and I said something like, God, I said, maybe you'll come back with me, Winston, will you? Like talking to the dog. And Daddy looked at me and he said, what do you mean? What are you sure he's not going anywhere? She's our dog. And I did not realize. I actually thought he still had that, and that was really, I think, the moment. Now I'm sure the other three girls, they'll have their moments when they
mm,
realized, things were really declining. But that for me was the moment that I
yeah.
realized, oh God, things are like I had to turn around. I actually had to leave the room because I really got upset. That
Of
it's nothing to do with
course.
Winston. It was
No, no, no.
just the realization that God, this is real.
Yeah.
And I think it was after that I really started to think about, okay, well, how do parents, how do aunts, how do uncles, how do they broach this with the
Mm.
younger members of the family, and also teachers,
Yes.
and
Yes. Very
and
important to be able to say to the teacher, this is going on at home.
oh, massive.
Yeah.
And for the teacher, like I remember a child, it was during, grandparents' day,
Mm.
and we do that very well in this country,
Yes, it's
like
lovely.
it's lovely. And a lot of schools will sort of invite grandparents in, and they will take maybe photos and they'll, different things like that. But there was one child and he was so upset because he was sitting on his own and his grandparents weren't there. I think maybe one of them had passed away, but the other one had this situation going on at home, and
Okay.
he said to me that, no, there's my granddad, he forgets things or whatever it is. And I knew, like,
Mm.
and obviously I didn't want to because the parent had not come to me. So, like, as a teacher, you never want to be that person who oversteps because
No.
that's not my place. But at the same time, you want to support the child. So
Yeah.
you kind of what I did sort of thing was try to, like, to be honest, some of the other grandparents were fab and they were took him under his wing and all this kind of thing. But I did ring the parent that evening and I
Mm.
just said, look, I just want to flag this with you. And then after that, we spoke about it and we talked about little things that could help there and all
Yeah.
those tips, I've given you there. And even one thing that worked for them was to have like a worry time. And I'm sure you've heard this before,
Mm.
between 6 and 7. Okay, this is the time when we sit down. We're going to talk about this. We're going to be real. We're going to have a full conversation about what's annoying you about this, and maybe, what can we do here in this situation to make you feel better, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but after that, then they can't. That's it for the evening,
Yeah.
and the night. And that works. It works well. Look, it depends on the child, doesn't it? I suppose,
Yeah, but it's a nice idea to be to give them that space and
Yeah,
say, sometimes in the
yeah.
evening, I like to do this. I like to talk to somebody about what's going on for me, and let's have this time. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, I don't know whether you've heard there was a podcast. It was Ruth Langsford, who's a TV presenter
Oh,
in the
yeah, I
UK,
know her. Yeah.
and
Mm.
she was with Fern Cotton on The Happy Place, and both her parents had Alzheimer's. And I thought it
I
was a
didn't
really,
hear
really
it.
lovely podcast. It wasn't just about
Oh,
that, but she touched on
yeah.
that because she has a book
Oh,
out. But she had lovely bits in there that hadn't even dawned on me, because she was saying, I think her mum was the first one to have Alzheimer's. And
mm.
I might have that the wrong way around, but she was saying, you
Yeah.
know, at first, when that parent started getting things muddled up, she would
Mm.
say, "Oh, don't be silly. You know that's not Ashling, or you know that that didn't happen. This is what happened." And correcting them all the time.
Yeah.
And it was
Oh,
the facility
mm.
that was helping her with the care that
Yeah.
said it's probably best to just accept what they're saying, because if you are kind of correcting them, then they start to even worry even more. Have
It
you
is.
experienced this?
Look, like
Yeah.
this is one of the, I'm so glad you said that, Steph, because this is one of the things I think is so important and actually what children do really well. So you have got to kind of go into their reality with them.
Yes.
That is it's number one, it is the kindest thing for the person. It
Yeah.
is, and you know what? We have all learned that nearly the hard way, because at the beginning, and you know what? It's us, just it's human nature to fight against, to
Mm.
resist, isn't it? To want to change, to fix,
Yeah.
it's just it's sort of our control as humans. I think we want that, but because look, this situation is out of control. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it feels. So, like, you can imagine for a little child that they don't have that cognitive ability to realize that they're, of course, it's out of control for them.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
why we have got to talk about this. But also just be in that moment with them. So, like, things like dad will say, like, where's Kathleen? Where's Kathleen? Kathleen's my mum. And at the beginning, Mom used to, she kind of be laughing it off and going, oh, sure, don't be calling me. I'm Kathleen, like messing with him, which was a real kind way of putting it. But
Yeah.
now she would say, she goes, oh, don't worry now, I'll get her now. That's what she does.
Yeah.
And it's so kind. And it just calms him completely.
Yes.
Or something like he will say, if you see him kind of going like this, and often it's when maybe they're overstimulated.
Mm.
There's too many people around, almost like the neurodivergent child.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's too many people around. They need to kind of come back to base, sort of thing, regroup, and you can see him kind of going like this, and he wants to move, and he's jiggling or whatever, and he says, "Oh, I think I'll go on. I think I'll go on home now." And you go, God, yeah. Do you know what? We will. I'll make you coffee first, and sure we'll do that then. And Daddy always loved coffee, and I think coffee summer twigs with him, so we always kind of say, "Oh, we'll get you a coffee,"
Oh.
and then that kind of, it brings them back to that.
Yes.
And children do, they come into that reality, like kids are so imaginative.
Well, I was
Like
going to
they,
say they kind of live in that space,
they
right? So they're like,
totally.
sure, yeah, we'll go,
Totally.
we'll do
Let's
this.
go. Whatever, wherever you are. Like,
Yeah,
so if the grandparent says, I'm in Spain or whatever at the minute, or in his mind, sure, that's great. Or even when, say they're playing a game, you will often see that that's quite engaging for the person, or say a jigsaw.
yeah.
That's quite engaging for the person with Alzheimer's because dementia, because that's a simple thing for them to do.
Well, and
That's a
it's there in
task.
there now. They don't have
Exactly.
to remember anything. It's
That's it.
happening there now.
That's it. You see,
Yeah,
that's it because that's all they have.
yeah,
The present is all they have. The past is sort of gone to them. The
yeah.
future is hazy. So they are, so it is a lesson. I've been saying that from the beginning. It's a lesson in mindfulness, and
100%.
children,
Yeah,
like children, if you think about kids, like kids, when they turn 4, they're 4.5 and I'm nearly 5, the day of their birthday. I mean,
yeah.
so they are constantly running ahead, but actually that person brings them back to that space too. So it's good for both parties, if that
Yes.
makes sense,
Yeah,
Steph,
I think it's lovely. I love the
um,
idea of them sat there playing together. How
massively.
lovely.
And be even being in that imaginative world, like I've seen. And another thing that works really well, like massively for just for our family, is music.
Yes.
And it's a bit like music therapy or play therapy or any of those things. But for dad, we play music, we sing, we've always done that, right? So it again, it touches something in him,
Yeah.
like and he loves music. So I mean, his grandchildren are fantastic. They play the harps, they play banjo, they play guitar, they sing, they play the accordion. They're so good. Like, and they will come in and they'll play for him.
How lovely.
They'll
That's so
sing with
nice.
him.
Yeah.
It's so lovely. And then even we will pick up the guitar or take, an
Mm.
instrument and play with him. And he absolutely, it calms him completely.
And does he
And
remember lyrics and things?
it's so funny. It's like this muscle memory.
Mm.
It's like somewhere there in the recesses. I don't know. It's some sort of, I suppose, it's all to do with the neuroplasticity and all that in the brain. But like it's one little wire that sometimes if a song kind of that he loved, he will know word for word, maybe like a verse, it
Yeah.
just out of the blue. And then other times he'd go, no, I don't know that one, and it's like Galway Bay, he loved that song, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, this kind of thing.
And then
but
I'm
but
assuming you kind of let it go. You
oh
don't say, oh, you do know this one.
Oh
You
God,
just,
no.
yeah, yeah,
No, no, no. You just kind of go with it, like
yeah.
so but I do think that partly this is because in the evenings, which again is a bad time, I got Mum a load of DVDs of like the Dublin, he loves the Dubliners and Christy Moore, and so she puts them on in the evening,
Nice.
and he's used to listening them, listening to
Mm.
them all the time on repeat, on loop, because he doesn't know that, per mom does. But like, so he listens and listens, and I think that sometimes it's nearly in there. Another thing that's it's funny, again, it's muscle memory. I was speaking about Irish one day to him. I don't know what the conversation was in at home, but I said, "Oh, Daddy," I said, "Sure, you used to do a bit of Irish in school." I don't. I was just because I know sometimes he say, "Oh, I don't know much Irish or whatever," and then out of the blue, he said, "On will cadagum dulgaji or leprous." He just started to
Wow.
say this. And like my dad doesn't, like, he's not a Gaeilgeoir, he doesn't have, but I don't know where it came out of. But he said, "Oh, that was really better into us in school, because that was the generation that
Yeah,
told
yeah.
them what to do, and they, you know what I mean. That was, the phrase he used. But
Isn't that amazing?
isn't it? Isn't it?
That
Like
somewhere in the
so?
recesses, those things,
Yeah.
and look, we all do
hmm
that to a certain extent. You can not
hmm
hear a song for 30 years, and
And
when it
then,
comes on the radio and you know all the
mhm,
words, you're like, I don't
yeah,
know how I know all
I
those
don't
words.
how. Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
those pathways were laid down at a certain time and that they still
It
have
it
access to
is to
them.
do with the neural pathways, definitely in the brain. Like they are exactly there. But if you think about dementia, sure, like I don't know, but I'm sure when doctors look at those scans, like I find that very interesting. Like they must be all, like I
Mm.
don't know what way it happens, but they have to be mixed up. They
Yeah.
have, if you think about like it's all, like for us, that's the way when we got those results, say, of daddy's scans and things like that, like, you just think, God, it must be so muddled up there because
Yeah.
that is how, that is the way it is, like,
Yeah, I'm picturing like a big ball of wool that's
that's
got
what
all
I am
messed up.
picturing too. And
Yeah.
even that's a good analogy for children because the thing is
Mm.
like you or I, we're not consultants, of neurology, but at the same time, we can in our head, that's what
Yes.
that's what we envisage. So I mean, why not say that to children?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
look, it's just, because we've had books and things, Steph, that touch on that those like look books if you have something, and that's what, look, I was saying that before we started, that's how I started writing this children's book to
Mm.
do with dementia, and basically it's based around Jack, who's actually my godson, Jack, and his grandfather, and basically they go on a journey of memories to find granddad's name, So I have a lovely girl at the moment, Aisling New Dublin. She's illustrating at the moment, and we are really working on that. The ideas of sort of imagery,
Yes.
and using that imagery and color and display, also with the words of the story. But I think just so kids can, like, imagine if a teacher sat down and, like, there isn't very much out there for us. There's a little bit, and the Alzheimer's Association, they do touch on it, that just talking about things like that, watch out for big feelings and all those little things, and they're very helpful, but I think we need more and more and more, don't we, really, to
Yeah, and lovely
you
to
know
open those conversations about all kinds of things. You know,
yeah.
when you've a parent or a
Mm,
grandparent with cancer
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever diagnosis that you can,
yeah,
have these
yeah,
very, I think
why not?
parents quite like a prompt, and I think a book is a lovely way of doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
And even when
yeah,
they're older, I was telling one of my friends this morning about a cartoon book. It's about the birds and the bees.
yeah.
But it's called Wait What? But it's
Oh,
particularly great for
yeah,
neurodivergent kids because
yeah. Hmm.
it's all the pictures and it's all done in a cartoon format. So how
Yeah,
lovely to have these available to us when
yeah,
we are going through difficult times.
yeah.
Let's be honest, it's difficult for all of you as adults, and then you're trying to negotiate how are you going to deal with
Children.
the children. So to
Mm-hmm.
have those little things that help, I think are
And
lovely.
yeah, and like that was something I heard quite a famous author talking about one day. He was like, the purpose of reading and books, like, I mean, apart from all the language parts and aspects that are so important for building, vocab and all that, you know, it's to help make empathetic children. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like, I mean, to build that into them, from they are so young is
Yeah.
so important, because then we have kind people, don't we? Then we have,
Yes.
like the world over. That is so. And the other thing I think, like me and you were talking about being a little bit real with children, like it's building resilience.
Mm.
It's building, like I remember speaking to a psychologist, an ex-psychologist, one time, and there was a particularly difficult situation happened in the school. It was the death of a child, and it was just horrific. And and I don't mean for me, I mean for the other children,
Yeah.
but I was so worried about how I would circumnavigate it.
Mm.
I was so concerned that I would say something wrong that was going to damage them,
Oh,
or that was, and they were, they were obviously struggling and all the rest. And I was like, how do I, what if I, and she was like, no, she said, children are so resilient. She
yeah.
said, and I'm not saying this is, of course, this is so tragic and, it should not have happened, but like, it will build resilience in them. It will
Yeah.
help build that, and nobody wants to have to, look, nobody wants to have to face this. Like, we don't want to have to face this, but look, everyone has stuff, don't they?
And we're back to kind of where we started, where we said about the just creating the space where they can talk about it if they want to
Yeah,
talk about it.
and not internalize it. you
Yes.
know I heard some of your speakers, talking about a few psychologists, and they were fantastic, but just
Mm.
about how, it's so important not to internalize that worry. And
Yeah.
I think we're getting better and better at sort of seeing children's cues for anxiety, seeing, God, is there something now? Are they upset? Are they
Mm.
annoyed? Are they, obviously we can't always be hyper aware. Like there's no point. Like you have to let children be children too, and
Yeah.
get around situations themselves as well. And that's part of it too. When I was thinking about the book, I was like, it's good for children to see. Like I wanted them to see that Jack does get upset. He does get
Yes.
frustrated, because that is true. That is real,
Yeah.
So
And that
yeah,
not
no,
all stories necessarily have that happy ending.
oh, no.
It's like my son is 12 and they're reading at school the
Oh.
book Wonder,
Yeah,
that about the
yeah,
child with
yeah.
a facial
Mm.
disfigurement. And his questions at the moment are phenomenal. I love
Really?
hearing
Yeah,
him question things and why did so
yeah.
and so treat him like that? And I can't believe they said that. And it's
Yes.
just that
Well,
introducing
that's
them to a
lovely.
world that's not perfect and that doesn't always,
Mm.
that child's never
It's not
going to be
fair.
fixed.
Yeah,
Your dad,
it's not
unfortunately, probably
fair.
won't be fixed, and it's not
No, no,
fair,
no,
but you're
no.
all in it together. That's the
Yeah, and
nice bit.
I do think that that's, a point, because, it's worth saying that, look, I'd be honest with them, like, as in, I don't know if Grandad is going to be the same each day we visit him. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a really
that's
key one. Yeah.
really key. Like, that it was something, and I might actually do a post on that and a few slides, because, they need to know that even though he might, his behavior might be a little bit different. There could be a day he's a bit angry, they're
Yes.
cross. There could be a day he's a bit sad, he's a bit
Mm,
anxious. There could be a day he might not want to play at all. But the crux of it is that he still loves you. You
yes.
know?
Yeah.
That's because then they feel almost, I think, content.
Mhm.
There's like, well, and also that he's still here. And while he's still here, you know, we still, you know, we still love him despite whatever is going on. And also despite whatever he says to you, like
Yes.
that's, I think very true. I love that, that book, Velveteen Rabbit,
Yes.
but like, that quote, like to paraphrase, like, by the time you're real, most of your hair is beloved out off and your eyes pop out. But by the time, once you're real, you can't be ugly, except people who don't understand.
Yeah.
And that is the crux of it, that we need to understand this. And I don't mean the science is behind it, that while that's, oh my God, it's fantastic. And I mean, my sister could explain that element of it much more, but kids don't need to know about
No, they
that. Like,
don't.
that
Yeah, it's
you're
so true.
you're only sort of, I suppose, worrying them more, I think, by going into it in grave detail.
And I'm assuming, do you do you go into these situations, say these visits, do you say,
Mhm.
okay, we're going to visit for half an hour today? Or
Yeah.
do you have the agreement that maybe, we're going to cut it short today? We might have to cut it short some days because
Yeah.
granddad might not be in the mood for us. But
Hmm.
I'm also thinking
Hmm.
of that the other way round, that maybe the children then can also, I don't know, have a code word or something where they say,
Yeah.
actually,
Mm.
I'm finding
I've
this
had enough.
difficult
Yeah,
today.
this is
Yeah.
difficult. Yeah, oh no, that's a good idea. A code word, actually. I love
Yeah.
that. That's really nice.
We used to do that with the kids when they were
It's
smaller. So we
lovely.
moved to a completely new area. So I didn't
Oh,
know the parents. And we,
yeah.
when they were smaller, there's lots of play dates after the school gates and
Yes.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it suddenly dawned on me that they were potentially going to a house that I didn't really know. I knew the
Yeah.
parents at the school gates, but I didn't know their house
Of
situation.
course.
So I just
Yeah.
said, if ever you want to come home and you don't
Mm.
want to say to the parent that you want to come home, just say that you've got a tummy ache. And most
That's
parents will be
perfect.
like, I'll ring your mum,
Perfect.
it's fine.
Perfect.
And I
Yeah.
remember, just it's completely random aside, but I think it helps people sometimes I remember dropping my little girl off at somebody's house, and within 20 minutes, the mum had rung and
Oh,
said,
yeah.
she's got a
Mm-hmm.
tummy pain. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So I went to pick her up.
Yeah.
And there was a that nothing bad had happened, but there was a
No.
situation that she was uncomfortable with. And I
Yeah.
was just delighted that she had used this. And there
Brilliant.
wasn't a drama. There
Yeah.
wasn't a,
No.
because you imagine
Big
being very
fight.
hard to say to a parent, oh, I want to go home now. You can't,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
why,
Can't. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, like, again, not wanting to offend
Yeah.
anyone that's in the room, maybe
Yeah.
having a code word where,
That's a good idea. And this is the other thing, not wanting to I'm using the term granddad here just because that's our
yeah,
situation,
yeah,
but it's nearly easier to have a name, isn't it? But or one name I suppose you can use, but like not sometimes, it's very important to not sort of upset the person with dementia by talking about them
them, yes,
or the situation,
yes,
around them.
of
Because
course.
just like children and they feel everything, so does that person.
Yeah,
And I heard a doctor speaking about this and I loved it. They said that, the the way the brain works obviously is mixed up, the signals get mixed up, all the rest of it, and things start to decline cognitively there, but the emotional side of the brain is still going. Like, it mightn't be to the same extent, it might fine, but it's still very much there, more
okay.
so. So they are feeling things. And I noticed that with daddy. Like, if anything, Steph, actually what I see is, that has got stronger, the emotional side.
Yeah, so it's
He's got
almost
nearly
like,
softer,
yeah, I'm thinking of a young
Yeah.
child where they are hugely emotional. They think with their emotional brain
That's
first.
because
So,
that's all they have. That's
yeah,
all they have.
yeah.
And that phrase, once an adult, twice a child, because
Mm,
they have regressed to
yes,
that. And it
yeah,
was actually when I was on and speaking to Claire Byrne about this, and she said, would you notice that? Would you notice those parallels, that regression between, the kind of the way the grandparent is now and the child, and then there's similarities there because that
yeah,
person is, it's almost like they're childlike again. They're
yeah,
in
yeah.
that state, and I think that relationship then, that can often be a really beautiful thing to watch.
Yes,
And to really just cement that with children, like that really is important. And what you said there about, being around and the code word and different things, like, again, I think it's worth, for parents maybe to always kind of try, especially if, like, the grandparent is in the, say, later stages and that kind of thing, that you're around and you kind of
yes,
are not really, like, I mean, like, hosing in and watch, but like, just be aware of both of their cues. Because
yes,
if the child is younger, like you said, they can't really tell you, they
yeah,
can't really say too much. I don't know why I'm having this big feeling, but I know I'm having it,
yeah,
somewhere in here. And your own child before they are going to blow off. Or, like, I would see in a class of 32, there might be one child that's sitting down there and I see him moving and I see him, like, and I
mm,
know that child needs a busy break. He needs a little moment in the library,
yeah,
whatever it is. And you can, and teachers do this every day, catch it before the behavior
yes,
starts,
yeah,
so definitely I think that's really important, that they are, yeah, that emotional side is definitely still there, and they feel so much, and they also feel, if you are talking about them, or if you're, so now we are very we're very, say things very gently. We don't say things in front of dad. We kind of
yes,
try as much as we can, just kind of, keep it outside the door if there's
yeah.
something we need to say, because it's not fair in him. Of course, it's
No,
not,
of course it's not. I think this is a really valuable conversation. I think you're doing amazing stuff because I think the more we talk about this, the easier it is for people.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
some of the stuff you've mentioned today is really valuable. I really love the idea of them sitting down and playing games or,
yeah.
a jigsaw, something really
It's
simple that they can both do
really
together.
simplistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even something like pictures, like, that's a valuable tool, is like, if, say, you're going on a visit, and say the person is declining, and you would notice that, like, kind of daddy's, say he's diagnosed maybe 4.5 years. In the past, even 6 months, he's really like, there's that kind of significant decline,
Yes.
and it's happened quite quickly, and if that's happening, it might be a case that, like you say, a short visit or whatever it is, but you could say to the child, okay, let's make granddad a picture. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And do that. It's something they can focus on.
Mm.
It gives them a focus. And also then when they go, they can chat to granddad, and I did this, and this is where you are, and this,
Yeah.
and I took some colours, and let's look at this. And like the
Lovely.
person with dementia is engaged too. And it's so simplistic.
Yes.
Sometimes the most simple thing is the easiest thing, it's the answer
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah. Or just being out in the back garden and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. When it's fine like that, it's like we live in front of a lake, and Daddy he used to love going for walks around the lake, and I, we kind of put, one of those Apple tags on him then, because, my mum could see on her phone, like on the app,
Yes.
like where he was. So it was very safe, we felt, but now that doesn't happen. He's way past that. But like, I mean, what she does is, she has him out in the garden, and he sits there, and
Yeah.
he can, and Winston can play around him, and they're together, and you know what I
Oh,
mean? And it's lovely. Like Winston knows, like, it's so funny how, like children, kids are so empathetic, or sorry, dogs are so empathetic. They
yes.
feel
Yeah. Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
So he will be, he's just like a emotional support dog, Steph,
Can I
I would
can I
say.
ask, does your dad still think he's a cat?
Well, no,
Oh, okay. I'm just checking.
but he calls him a cat. Like, that's what
Oh,
he
okay.
used to call him, just because whenever dogs get like a cut or whatever, and
Mm.
the groomer used to do him so beautifully. She'd like do his face, and he had a little beard, and then everything else would be very shaved lightly.
Yes.
So Daddy
Yes.
used to look at him like, this isn't a real thing. Is this a real thing? Because like he's that older generation. They didn't get dogs, groomed, like, and
No.
I would have Winston groomed to within an inch of his life. Like, he was always getting his hair done.
Oh,
So that was the joke about the cat, but he just loves him, like, and
I
he
just
is a
think it's
support
fab.
dog.
I love the
Yeah,
fact
it's
that
funny.
Winston unintentionally has become like an emotional sport animal.
Absolutely. Oh my God, massively. And you know what? It wasn't even hard for us to give him
Of
up. It
course
wasn't
not.
even,
No.
it gives me such joy to see him with
Yeah.
Daddy. Like, I love it. Like, and Mom was even saying when they're going to bed that it's so weird. Like, Dad will still check all the lights, all the plugs. Now that is a little bit of anxiety that
Yeah.
creeps
Yeah.
in again. It's like they have to kind of make sure everything, because
Yes.
it's sort of somewhere again in the recesses of the brain. It's
Yeah.
there, and they need to check the plugs. And she said, like, he will go and he'll tuck Winston in his blanket, and tuck it all around him in, like a child, like a child.
And does
It's
Winston let
hilarious.
him?
Lets him,
Oh, I
loves
love
it,
it.
and
I love
all
it.
he has is his head sitting out like that. I should put a picture of him on
Do,
the
do.
Instagram.
We all
I
need to
will,
see
because it'd be
Winston.
funny. Yeah.
Just give us the name of your Instagram, because we
Yeah,
want
so
everyone
it's
to go and follow you.
Aimee Owens. So AIMEEOWENS
All one
87.
word. Oh,
All one
87.
word. 87, yeah. At
Perfect.
Aimee
We're
Owens.
all going to follow along, and any of
Thanks.
your tips and tricks, and Winston, obviously, and your book. We're going to be watching for the
Yeah,
book
yeah, yeah.
too,
Hopefully
because
soon. Hopefully soon. Another little while, but we're getting there. We're getting there now, Steph. Yeah. And actually, I'm going to be. I can let you know. You can pop that up. Tanya Sweeney did an interview. Just about all of this, I suppose. It's going to be in the parenting section of the Independent. Actually,
oh,
I'm not
lovely.
too sure when it'll be. Another week or two, I presume. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
pop
that'll
it on
be.
your
Yeah,
Instagram.
I
Another
will.
reason for us to follow you on Instagram.
Just something to, it's only to help people
Yeah,
really, and just become more aware. And that's like your page is fab, and talking about all this is fantastic. So
yeah.
thank you so much for having me, Steph.
Thank you for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. See you now. Bye.
Can I just ask a quick favour? Could you either follow or like or subscribe or do all of those things? And if you leave a review, that would be amazing. Thank you.